We're back for part 3 of the abstract landscape weaving. Let's get started. Here is where I left off. We've got a lot of sky going on and I'm moving into the darker blues now. So I have them all laid out here and it has been a couple weeks since I sat down to weave this. So I need to figure out where I am going next with it. I think I do some lighter blue to start with. I think I'm gonna just bring this one up through this loop that I have here and continue that on. So now that I'm moving into the darker colors, I'm wondering if what I should do next is basically go back and forth with this lighter blue and this darker blue so that we can blend them a little bit more and really start bringing this into the deeper colors. So I'm gonna grab a length of this. And since I have quite a few ends going on this side, I'm gonna start this on the other side. And we'll see what it looks like just to go back and forth between the two colors. What I'm concerned about is if I go back and forth with only one row of each, it's going to make the ends, like the edges rather, not quite as tidy because these ends would have to crisscross with each other. So we're gonna see if this is the look I want or not and go from there. Let's just see what it would look like if I just went fully into the dark blue now, because at some point I've got to make that transition from mixing those colors to going fully in to the dark. I think I'm okay with it moving right into the dark blue. I'm just checking my edges here, hoping that they're still looking pretty straight, which I think they are. Okay, let's do one more row. And then I'm hoping to add some darker merino wool roving. So I'm gonna split this like I have all the other sections of roving. I used about 1/4 thickness. I need to decide where this is starting, like where do I want the center? And it looks like I would be safe with it starting here. What I'm looking for, and something I mentioned in the past videos, is where these little tips of these sections end up. And the example I used is when you're laying plank flooring, you don't want all of the places where one piece meets up to the other to be in a line across your floor. And you also don't want it to be so perfect that it's like a line here, a line here, a line here, a line here. So that's what I'm looking for here. So I have an end way over here. We have it here, 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 here. See how they're all staggered really nicely? So now I'm looking for where the next one should be. I was just thinking it should be here, but that kind of meets up almost like exactly with this one. So where else could I meet up? Maybe like just past that? Or because this one is far enough back, I could have it in there. But I can see I don't have any end right here. So let's make it there. So I'm gonna tuck that back in there. And this isn't a very long piece, but I do wanna use it up. So that looks good there because you can see, again, below it, there's no other ends there. And I'm just weaving this over 2 under 2 like I did the past wool roving sections, pretty much every section. So how far back could I come with this? I'd get a decent ways, so let's try that. And I might be able to get away with a shorter tail on that end. So let's try that. I think I want this in reverse. So instead of having it end on the top, I kind of want that to be on the bottom. So I'm gonna pull this out a little bit and we'll go back this way. There, that looks better. We'll end it right over here. Now I'm gonna go back in with this dark blue. Okay, I want to go back in with this cotton frizz ribbon now because it's been a few different sections since we've done it. Now I know that down here they're more spread out, but since I have less options for my darker colors, I think that'll be okay to just do that right here. And the more I look at this, the more I'm like, I don't know how much further I actually want to go. I'm wondering if it would look better not to go that much further, which calls into question, how am I hanging this? Because we've got these really, really long loops at the top, and that's going to be a bit too long. Okay, let me show you the options I was thinking about for how to hang this. Both options are poster hanging hardware, essentially, where you squeeze the poster between the two things. But this one is a little beat up, so it might need some cleaning up before I can actually use it. But you basically squeeze it between these two pieces. Looking at this now, I think these are too wide and they are metal, so I can't just like cut them down. Whereas the other option, and these are from IKEA, I could cut these down because they are just wood, bamboo to be specific. So we could do that as well. I'm just trying to visualize. I don't know if I love the black though. I think they might look, on a piece this size, they might look a little bit too much in your face. I could paint them, but I'm just not totally sold on that idea. I think they might just be too big. I feel like these would look better on a really large piece so that they're not as much a focal point. Whereas right now, I'm feeling like they're very much a focal point. So we have to consider the fact that I don't know how I'm hanging this. Now, in a piece like this, it actually would have been really ideal for me to weave it upside down, but personally, that's not really how my brain works. I like seeing my piece right side up and having it come together in that way just makes more sense in my head. Having to work upside down means that I would probably be constantly turning the loom around to look at it right side up. What other options do we have? Okay, so another option, if it's at all the right size, is a vintage frame. Ignore the broken glass. I figured the broken glass one would be actually really smart to use because I don't necessarily need glass to display a weaving. This one is kind of on the small side, so I don't think that one would work. This one looks like it's nearly the perfect size. Let me take out carefully so I don't break the glass more. If I take out these staples, and I know this is kind of like jumping the gun. However, if I do decide to frame it, it's, you know, I kind of need to know how much further to weave. So I kind of just wanted to grab this piece out to see if this would fit well in this frame. It looks like this would actually be the perfect size of frame for this weaving. Let's put this behind so that we can look at the size. Now, the one thing I have to keep in mind is that when you take a weaving off the loom, it's going to shrink up a little bit because right now it's under tension. So I kind of just need to know, will this be big enough? It's a little shy, but it might be okay. So I'd only have to weave about another inch for that to work. I think we need to see what it looks like in the weaving. So I'm gonna put my glass in a paper bag and see what we're working with. Now we've got the glass out, we can really look at this and decide if this would be cool or not. So you can see it's a little bit narrow right here, but I also wonder if I could stretch it out at all, but that might be a whole thing. Oh, it's pretty close. It might be okay. And I wonder if it's when it's off the loom, if I were to steam it a little bit, I might be able to let it out a bit. Kind of looks neat with just no background up here, but then that's gonna give us more, I think, of a challenge than is necessary. The other option would be to go for a branch. Ooh, there's something about that. Now, the only issue I have with this is the fact that these loops are so long. So I would have to potentially shorten these loops somehow, or hang it on there a different way. But I kind of like the branch. I feel like maybe it suits it better. And also I want to save this frame for something else. It's probably the biggest reason. Okay, I'm gonna keep weaving. So I'm gonna go in with the cotton frizz next, and we'll revisit. We'll see where we end up. We'll see how I'm feeling about it. We'll see if I want to go just weave it way longer, hang it on the branch. I just don't know yet. So I'm at the point now where I'm doing smaller sections of, am I doing smaller? They're kind of smaller sections of the plain weave because it's very dark. And so I'm trying to get in some of these other blues a little bit closer together at this point. Whereas down here, I didn't really have to worry about that as much because the plain weave I did down here was so light. So I'm trying to mix this in more, and I'm still undecided where I'm going with this, but let's get some more of the silk chiffon in. So now I'm gonna be coming from this side, and I might bring it all the way over here. I'm doing a lot longer pieces now, but I think it suits the section. So what I'm trying to do at this point is I'm trying to start straightening this out. So we still have a bit of a curve here. And what I need to be doing as I get closer to where I'm going to be ending this is I need to straighten out this line. Now, if I had a curved piece of wood, for instance, and I was trying to match that curve, then that might be a different scenario. But for this one, I am trying to get it straight at the top. So right now you can see that I've filled out this a little bit more, but this end is going down quite a bit. So I'm going to find where somewhere in about here, where it's getting close to matching this line, and I'm gonna start my silk chiffon there. So once again, I'm kind of eyeballing where other ends are, and there's none in this vicinity. So I'll probably go to about there. Now you can see we're getting this a little bit straighter now. So I'm gonna cut off the excess here. I'm definitely leaning toward hanging this from a branch. I think it just suits it more, and I just don't want to use that frame for this particular purpose. So, okay, I'm gonna weave a little bit more. Actually, I'm gonna just do this first. So what I'm gonna do is, since I took out the cardstock from the bottom, my warp strings are a little bit looser now. So I'm gonna pull off just one loop from this far end, and I'm gonna create that, what is it called? A half hitch? Is that what it's called? You macrameers will know. Half hitch? Lark's head? No. Lark's head? I don't know. Whatever that one is. And I'm putting it over this to see how long we're left with. That's pretty long. So I think I definitely want to weave probably to about here. So another inch or so from here. Let's slip that back off. All right, so I'm gonna do something right in here because we do need this to start filling out a little bit more. So I'm gonna go in with plain weave. I'm gonna meet up with the silk chiffon. Then I'm gonna go back. And then with this next row, I'll go all the way across. So that's another way to help us sort of start filling out this side so it gets straighter. I want to go back in with the merino wool roving again. And similar to what I've been doing throughout this section, I'm going to start this on the very end here because I want to fill this section out. Looks like I'd be safe to bring this one right to here. So there's this one here, but if I stay just a little bit closer, oh, I do have one right there. We'll go right in here. Oh, if we go a little bit past. Okay, I'm really liking how this is moving into that more dark, almost storm cloud feel at the top. And it does feel gradual, which is what I was hoping for. So I'm just gonna stand up and look at it a little bit further away. But I really like that. I'm still debating on what's gonna happen at the bottom. I think I might wanna add a fringe. The tricky part about that is what color am I gonna choose? So one of my thoughts, and I know I'm kind of like backtracking again, but I'm trying to think about all of these things while I'm doing them. My one thought was to do this brown because we did use it here. But now that I look at that, I'm not sure that's the right color. I could do my classic off-white. I could go in with this, which might be really nice. It might just sort of brighten up the piece. And I want to do a short fringe if I do a fringe because I just think that would look, really pretty. Okay, I'm leaning toward the white. Let's see what other options I have. I have one other option, which is sort of an in-between the brown and the white, which is this kind of linen type color. And I actually think that would be really pretty too. So I'm just kind of laying it out to see Try to visualize what it would look like. That could be really cute. It almost like represents like the roots underneath the ground. I'm just gonna cut off one little chunk because I want to see what it would look like. I definitely think that could work. It ties pretty well into the other colors we've got going on. I don't think it looks super out of place or anything. Okay, and then let's look at a piece of this. That's a hard choice because there is something about putting some off-white in here that I really like, because I think it just sort of gives the piece a bit of a lift that I like. Just trying to do a larger section to get a real good feel for this. All right, so I'm gonna let this just hang out down here while I keep weaving so I can keep kind of envisioning what I might prefer. I'm leaning still toward the off-white. There's just something about brightening it up in that way that I think looks really good, but we'll see. Hopefully I'll have an epiphany about the fringe. So I'm weaving one last row of over 2, under 2 plain weave. And then I do want this to end the same way that it started. So that's gonna be with an over 1, under 1 twining stitch so that everything just remains super stable when we take this off the loom. Okay, so here's where I'm starting our over 1, under 1 plain weave. And then to do the actual twining stitch, I am gonna grab a new piece, because if I were, I don't have enough on this one, but if I were to try to turn around and tighten everything, I find what that does is it ends up pulling the side in where you turned around quite a bit. So I like to use a new piece, and I'm gonna make it a little longer than necessary. And I'm actually, for this, going to grab just a small yarn darning needle, whatever you want to call it. It's just a metal one. It's a little bit more easy to maneuver into these tight spaces. I have completed the weaving. Now I'm going to flip this over and show you the intense reality of how I'm going to have to finish this, because I can feel just how many ends are back there, and this is going to be a process. Double checking that top again, trying to stretch it out a little. I stayed pretty straight, I think. All right. So this is what the back looks like. And I'm not gonna lie, it is a little bit intimidating. So now that the front or the weaving is done, I can get rid of the tape. And you know, this is just gonna take some time. I'm gonna probably use mainly this needle as well as a slightly larger plastic one to tuck in the ends. I'm trying to decide where I wanna start. I think I'm gonna start with the thicker stuff, all the stuff out in the middle, and then move to the sides. But you're gonna get to see this in a much faster time frame. But let's time how long this actually takes, shall we? All right, I'm gonna start a stopwatch and we'll see how long this takes me. Everything has been tucked in and now it's looking very neat and tidy. Now I am gonna go ahead and trim some of these little hairy bits off the edges from the cotton frizz ribbon. Here's the part where I'm gonna have to add the fringe. It's gonna make the bottom a little bit more tricky because obviously once I actually add a fringe and a base layer to this, it's gonna mean there's less string here for me to grab onto. I could do 7mm cotton string, just one little bunch on each, or, and this is kind of what I'm leaning toward, I could take a 5mm and I believe it's 2mm. So a 5mm plus a 2mm, which does get us to the 7mm, but it gives us a little bit of variation. And I think because there's so much variation going on in this piece, that this would look really good. So a piece of 5mm, a piece of 2mm. So it just gives like some dimension to the fringe. So there's like a thick and thin. Next, I need to figure out how many pieces I need. So I'm gonna be wrapping these around 4 strings at a time. So I'm gonna have 24 here. So on this far end, basically what I'll do, because I have 6 strings here, I will go 3 strings on each side of that piece of fringe. Not a big deal at all. So I'm gonna cut 24 pieces of the 5mm and then 24 pieces of the 2mm. All right, so now I'm ready to add the fringe as well as sort of the base work of the piece again, which will be a plain weave, a twining stitch, and plain weave. So I think what I'm gonna do, since I don't have a lot of space to work in, is I'm going to do my fringe pieces first and then add that structure underneath. So I'm gonna start around the first 4 strings. This is always kind of awkward to do after, but we can always tighten up this knot later. So I'm just gonna tighten it up the best I can and then flip it over top and just continue on. Oh, I forgot to stop the timer. Okay, so I forgot to stop the timer when I was done tucking in the ends, but I'm at 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 23 seconds. So I think it took me just under an hour to tuck in all those ends. There were a lot of them. It was worth it because I love how this looks, but just to give you an idea, I got rid of my tape too soon. I wasn't sure that I was going to be doing a fringe at all. So I'm retaping my loom down to the table right now because it's kind of driving me crazy that it's shifting all over the place. So now that I have my twining stitch and plain weave, I'm gonna use my weaving comb to push those up against my fringe. And I'm doing that nice and tight so everything stays secure. And here's where I probably will have to go back and tighten up the fringe just a little bit because we didn't really have anything to tighten it up against before. And it doesn't have to be super tight. I think that looks pretty good. Now, the last thing I need to do before I can start taking this off of my loom is to just tuck in these last 2 ends. I'm gonna cut off some of the excess of that one. So now I can actually get rid of my tape, which I'm gonna save for whatever project might be next. Tuck in these ends. All right, so now I'm gonna flip the fringe back forward. And because this piece has so many warp strings, I'm not gonna be tucking in the warp strings, I'm just gonna knot them. So first thing I need to do is make sure that this spacing looks even so that the bottom is straight. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take little groupings of the fringe and tie overhand knots. This first grouping just had 3 strings just because of the way it was starting and finishing. But from here on out, I'm gonna grab 2 groupings at the same time and overhand knot them, making sure that knot is nice and tight to my bottom base work. All right, I'm gonna do all the cleaning up and hanging this, and then we'll have a look at the finished piece. All right, the piece is complete and I'm so happy with how this turned out. So let's have a look at the finished piece. Thank you so much for joining me on this 3-part series. If you enjoyed this video, check out this one next.